panel discussion. And as a part of this panel discussion, I think before this, I've shared with the panelists a rough draft of a white paper that CGM is trying to develop. And our idea is that, take inputs from this panel discussion and then further get inputs from other experts also, and then eventually come out with a white paper which kind of clarifies some of these ambiguities and informs practitioners and other relevant stakeholders. So just to set the context of this panel discussion, India is entering a decisive moment, where two powerful frameworks are intersecting for the first time. Our mandatory CSR laws and the emerging carbon markets. On one side, CSR has channeled thousands of crores of money into social and environmental development, but with strict limits on profit making, ownership and compliance. On the other side, carbon markets generate tradable assets with clear climate monetary value, demanding long-term commitments, additionality, transparency and strong community governance. The convergence of these two systems present both extraordinary opportunity and a profound ambiguity. Who can own carbon credits from CSR funded projects? How do we ensure additionality when CSR is already mandatory? What safeguards protect communities, land and carbon rights? And what role should CSR play in building India's pipeline of high integrity, community centered climate projects under CCTS, which is the Indian carbon market that is developing, as well as the other carbon markets that are out there, like the voluntary carbon markets or the Article 6, which is being shaped under the UNFCCC. Today's discussion brings together exactly the four perspectives needed to unpack this legal clarity, corporate strategy, development cooperation, and community stewardship. Our goal is not only to understand what is possible, but to interrogate what is responsible, lawful, and just as India aligns corporate responsibility with climate goals. So I'll begin with inviting our esteemed speakers onto the dais. I will first start with inviting our moderator, Shri Naveen Bhai Patidar. Naveen Patidar is the Chief Executive Officer of Aga Khan Rural Support Program India, a pioneer development agency in rural livelihoods. He has national and international level exposure to development related work, particularly in rural livelihoods. He has over 15 years of professional experience in designing and managing large development projects in sustainable agriculture, youth empowerment, livelihoods, financial inclusion, and women empowerment. He has expertise and experience in working with communities living in extreme poverty. During his tenure as program head of the organization, he led the transformation of programs through promoting innovations, better designing of programs, and use of digital technologies. Thank you so much, Naveen Bhai, for joining us. We also have another Naveen with us, Mr. Naveen Horo. So, inviting you, Mr. Naveen Horo, to the dais. Naveen Horo is a seasoned development professional serving as senior advisor at GIZ India with over 20 years of experience in natural resource management, rural livelihoods, and climate resilient agriculture. He has contributed extensively to soil health and sustainable land management, notably through GIC's Pro Soil initiative, which promotes circular economy solutions such as the municipal compost in farming. As an editor and contributor to Healthy Soil for Prosperous India, he has also spoken at global platforms on scaling climate-smart agricultural solutions, including digital and extension-based approaches to support farmers. Thank you so much, Mr. Naveen, for joining us. Now, I would like to invite Mr. Tarush Jain, please. Thank you, Tarush. Mr. Tarush Jain is the founder and CEO of Sarthak Collective and leads Gyan Global, bringing over 8 years of cross-sector experience in strategy, governance, and institution building. His work focuses on strengthening organizations by helping them define their purpose, design effective strategies, and build long-lasting institutional structures. Alongside his consulting and leadership work, he writes analytically on public policy and governance, contributing through pieces on issues such as tax regulation, digital governance, and the Aadhaar bill. His broader interests and reflections are also captured in his writing platform, The Underage Pragmatist. I'm sorry. I would now move on to invite Mr. Prabhat Kumar Jha to the dais, please. Mr. Prabhat Kumar Jha is currently leading Climate Resilience and Sustainable Development (CR4SD) initiatives at Reliance Foundation as the team lead. He brings to his role a background in coordinating large-scale development programs. He previously served as a team coordinator for the National Resource Center for Livelihoods. Thank you so much, Mr. Prabhat, for joining us. Now I would like to invite Mr. Mahesh Gupta ji. Mr. Mahesh Gupta is a highly accomplished professional with an exceptional academic record. He has been practicing as a company secretary since 1986 and is also a certified CSR professional. With over 40 years of teaching experience, he has been a popular faculty member at leading institutions such as NIRMA, IRMA, EDI, SEP, MICA, IIM Ahmedabad, CIIE, and others. Mr. Gupta is a founding team member and board member of iCreate, which is a world-class incubation center inaugurated by the Prime Ministers of India and Israel. And last but not the least, I would like to invite Mr. Rajesh Suthar. Thank you. Mr. Rajesh Suthar is a development professional with more than 16 years of experience. He is associated with Ambuja Foundation for more than 12 years and worked in different locations and different positions, which enriched his experience of working with smallholder farming families. He is a graduate in horticulture and MBA in rural marketing. Currently, he is looking at agriculture-based livelihood programs as a vertical head. I'm very, very happy and honored to have this very esteemed panel. And so, over to you, Naveen Bhai. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Siddharth. So we are having this very important and emerging topic which will be discussed here. We all know that carbon is becoming very, very important commodity. And the traditional programs which NGOs used to run using the charitable grants, either in the form of CSRs or from private trusts, we were always doing things like, let us say, plantations, sustainable agriculture, biogas, those kind of things, solar. But whether those kind of activities can be connected to carbon offsets and whether it can be funded through CSRs, it adds another complexity. So where this sector is going, what are the legal, ethical, moral questions or practical questions, we'll try to get into deeper understanding. So without wasting much time on introductions, I first go to first thing first. Maheshji, if you can tell us what the law says, whether in the current form, the CSR law, which is Companies Act 2013, whether it allows for CSR funds to be used for offsetting carbons.
Good afternoon to you all, friends. It's my pleasure to be with you this noon. The first question is thrown to me, so I have the liberty to talk more. There would not be any repetition at least. See, as far as the CSR is concerned, despite 11 years of its mandatation, it is in the nascent stage. The CSR obligation through section 135 of the Companies Act was mandated from 1st of April 2014 under the Companies Act 2013. Every company which has 1,000 crore of turnover or 500 crore of net worth or 5 crore of net profit under section 198, which is basically the gross profit before tax, they have to spend at least 2% of their net profit on corporate social responsibility. What activities they can engage into? It is Schedule 7 of the Companies Act defines. When I look at the provision, it's clause 4 of Schedule 7, ensuring environment sustainability, ecological balance, protection of flora and fauna, animal welfare, agroforestry, conservation of natural resources, and maintaining quality of soil, air and water. These are the things covered. So therefore, as far as the legal is concerned, a question would arise, can this carbon credit or carbon generation could be used as a CSR activity? Now the question is, how we are going ahead? That's very important. In FAQ, it has been already stated that you have to spend the money. Now in CSR, it is a credit, I am not spending. It is an asset, what I have. So whatever carbon emission we have to offset that carbon emission through the credit, number one. And secondly, if there is any surplus only, that should be done, nothing beyond. And as soon as my account for the carbon emission and carbon credit is set off, any surplus only could be explored, nothing beyond. Secondly, there is also one provision which speaks that whatever is your legal obligation under any other law, you have to comply, that cannot be part of the CSR. This is also very important. I just give you an example. There was an inter-ministerial communication, one ministry, labor, along with to the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, that whatever apprenticeship fee is paid to the apprenticeship or apprentice, what a company is required to take and provide or impart training, could it be considered as a CSR? That internal circular is on the media, but there is nothing from the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. There could be a view that whatever is my obligation, suppose I have to take 50 apprentice, whatever apprenticeship fee has been prescribed under the law, that cannot be CSR. But if I provide more than 50 as an apprenticeship voluntarily and pay them the higher than what is the minimum salary which has been fixed or minimum style, could it be considered? So Labour Ministry has requested Ministry of Corporate Affairs, but they have not replied so far. As far as the carbon credit is concerned, because there is another provision which says you should spend, it is not spending. So we'll discuss on that.
Yeah.
You can take your other.
There will be another round. Thank you so much. Now I go to Naveen. Because you are working in an international organization and for large numbers of years, GIZ has also promoted sustainable agriculture in the country, whether soil health or forestation. There have been large numbers of projects. What do you see from international perspective as well as policy level in India, where this sector is moving, whether there is discussion happening at the policy level, whether carbon offsetting activities can be undertaken under CSR or any other similar provisions. So what do you see at the top level, the Indian government level or international level?
Let me break this down into three pieces, at the macro level and then at the meso level and then the operational level. Right? So when we look at the meso level, macro level, of course there is this growing market for carbon credits, voluntary space, compliance, talk about Article 6 now, there is a lot of commitments coming in, a lot of mechanisms building. So there is a growing carbon market demand also. The question therefore was, what does it mean for sustainable agriculture, right? When you go out to a farmer and say, okay, you adopt this measure because you will get a carbon credit with incentives, he or she is not even interested, right? For he or she as a farmer, the primary sort of objective is to ensure that the production is good, it's sustainable, and they get some returns out of it. Other ecosystem services like carbon and all, it's a long-term thing. So keep farmers in the center of your thought when you think of carbon markets. Now then, how do you really create this narrative? For whom is this carbon credits going to work? And therefore, what we also were talking about was, if we want to move towards sustainable agriculture, agroecology, sustainable food systems, carbon credits becomes one of the means of the finance, which is a top-up to all the other services, all the other benefits that you are trying to bring in into the agricultural food systems. So carbon credits or carbon markets are not the end of it. It's only a part of it, a small part of it, a cherry on the cake, as we say, right? So that's the context one needs to really understand. The other is, if you also look at how the policy environment is moving, evolving, we are still in a dichotomous stage as of now, where on one end, as part of our nationally determined contributions, we haven't talked about mitigation benefits from agriculture. We haven't committed to it. We have committed to adaptation in agriculture. The moment you start talking about, hey, we have to reduce carbon footprints in agriculture, there will be a great opposition, because we haven't, as a country, we haven't committed to it. So as long as the adaptation story is there at the policy levels, that's a welcome idea. On the other side, there has been also an initiative, all of you might have also heard about this, that the Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare launched a framework for voluntary carbon markets for sustainable agriculture. Now the idea therefore there was, if ministry is promoting sustainable agriculture, can the additional incentives from voluntary carbon markets play a role in providing some top-up incentives to the farmers? I'm again using the word top-up because carbon credits should not be the sole purpose of what we are doing and what we are talking about. Right? So that's the second level of response. Last one in terms of the operationalities is, I'll take you to the philosophy of why even carbon market evolved, right? It evolved from the perspective of what is the status quo now, what is additional investments you're trying to make to get climate mitigation benefits. That's the simple of the philosophy, right? Whether you talk of insetting, where a company invests on its own to reduce the carbon footprint in their supply chain, or you talk about offsetting, where you are creating carbon credits and selling it, right? The whole philosophy is, what is the status quo, additional investments, and hence carbon credits. If you look at that lens, I would still I'm not expert in the law, but I would still want to seek some clarity on, do you really count CSR as part of these investments into mitigation? That's a bigger question, right? CSR has a very, if Sir has mentioned now, like CSR came with a different mandate, a very focused mandate, right? To serve the sustainability and development agenda. It was not investment to reduce carbon footprint. So now we have to really unpack this. Are these two same? And sort of avoid this confusion. The investment in CSR can be also considered for carbon benefits. I'll give an example and a quick story. We are working with a private sector partner, a huge global one, right? And we first started off saying that let's try out insetting. We didn't go for the CSR funds. It was coming from the mainstream business because it was insetting, right? And they have to give evidence that as part of their mainstream supply chain, they have invested in the supply chain and hence insetting is happening. Then we realized insetting carbon credits generated out of insetting is not giving you enough value. And then we moved on to offsetting. Again, the same philosophy, there is additional investment coming from the private partner, and hence the carbon credits generated are tradable as offsetting. So I think this is a thin line. I think there is a lack of clarification, but I think I'll go back to the philosophy and basic principles of it to unpack this a bit more.
Thank you. I think it was really enlightening to see whether carbon offsetting itself is connected to CSR in its core philosophy. Legal thing is slightly away from this thing, but whether the core philosophy behind CSR, it matches with this kind of arrangement of carbon trading offsetting, insetting. So now I go to Mr. Prabhat. He comes from a very large corporate foundation. So from your perspective, if tomorrow if you go to your, let us say, bosses and start saying that we want to develop this kind of arrangement with farmers, what do you think, what will be their response?
See, actually, the mandate of CSR, I think, is giving back to the society. And as far as it is concerned, if my 1 rupees can give 10 times or 100 times result in the community, the idea is always well. So, I think idea-wise there is no problem, but at present, if you will see the carbon market, it is dominated by investors and project developers. So, where do you see a farmer in the overall framework? And I have discussed with a lot of companies which come with ideas that we are working on carbon projects and we have so and so carbon projects running in different areas. But when we engage deeper in discussion, then we find there are no evidences or very few evidences are there. And CSR tend to invest in proven tracks. We do work for rural transformation, for improving climate resilience, in land and water activities. We do a lot of plantation activities. So, as Sir has described, that in Schedule 7, already activities are laid out. So you can make the investment and there is no restriction if you are going by the law. So I think for any CSR, the appeal will be, what is the multiplier effect of our money? If we can think with another perspective, sustainability is one of the challenges we face in any project. So, if we think that this carbon credit as an idea, it can give long-term returns, then can this be linked with sustainability or ecosystem services that community is providing, and if some compensation can be thought of or some mechanism can be laid out, then I think it can work very nicely.
So basically what I could understand is what he's trying to say is that if carbon credit, if actual incentive can be passed on to farmers, because these are long-term projects, 20 years, 30 years. So after CSR projects are closed, whether that incentive can sustain the project on the ground, because farmers have incentive to maintain their farms or forests even after projects are closed. So that is the whole, one argument towards why we should go for carbon offsetting projects through CSRs. Now I go to Tarush. In your work, you have helped large corporations to design such projects. What do you see, what is the core philosophy of large corporations to design such projects? What is their long-term view?
Right. So, yeah, I think I would agree with Sir. I think the principle behind CSR is doing social good, doing social development. And I think, of course, from a corporate point of view, they would also, what they also want a strategic benefit is that, they usually do CSR projects around the manufacturing side, so, community, let's say community support for their work. Also, at a level, they want some strategic branding as a good corporate citizen. And that's the primary driver for CSR. But just from a legal standpoint, we understand that CSR cannot be used for business benefit. That's very important. And defining that line for carbon credits is going to be critical.
For instance, there are obviously so talked about Schedule 7 and Clause 4, and there have been a lot of environmental projects happening for the last 10 years by corporates. And to an extent, practically speaking, now that the sustainability reporting standards have come in, they are being they're being reported as part of their sustainability reporting and sustainability agenda. However, when we talk about offsetting and generating carbon revenue, that would be a clear business and revenue intention, which I'm not sure would come under CSR. So that is something that obviously MCA would clarify eventually. But if CSR, as Sir said, if carbon credits can be a mechanism to make CSR projects more sustainable in the long run, and perhaps also contribute to the sustainability strategy of the internal sustainability strategy of companies. That is something that I see evolving. But for offsetting, for generating carbon revenue, that is something that we need more clarifications on from the MCA.
Thank you so much. I think at the top level, it looks all win-win. A corporation is offsetting its carbon emission, while the farmers are benefiting through sustainable practices, reduction in cost, soil health, etc. But then there are these thin lines, which he is trying to narrate, that whether CSR laws per se has any clarity on whether such kind of engagement is possible. Whether this investment has to be done through mainstream business investment or through CSRs. So that line is still there, that confusion is still there in the whole thinking and architecture of CSR. Now I go to Rajesh. Rajesh comes from Ambuja Foundation, and Ambuja Foundation, because it is directly working with farmers, they are directly engaged with the community. So I would like to hear from you that in carbon projects, what kind of safeguards or what kind of first advantage or disadvantages you see for farmers to engage in this kind of projects, or what kind of safeguards you will take if you have to do such projects?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, definitely I agree with panelists that there is a very thin line between CSR projects and that carbon-related projects. Taking in safeguarding, I think that is like from both sides. Whenever some investor or some CSR is spending money on development program, and same thing like when farmer is your beneficiary. But many times what's happened that we are doing the rural development program, and as like already said, that carbon credits are the byproduct, not is the but main thing. So whenever we do implementation of the rural development program, the farmer basically have trust on your organization because you are working since long, and they have trust that you are getting, you are implementing some project that you are getting some out of it, like in the increase of production or sustainability or water management or soil health management. But whenever we talk about like carbon credits or climate, like since we implementing carbon mitigation, carbon adaptation measures with the farmer, and farmers see that there is a benefit and a potential of doing these things and helping them to absorb the carbon shocks. But in the second part, like whenever we try to implement or develop a project that end product is like carbon credits, that time farmer will always hesitate, or like they are they are like not clear due to like that the framework of carbon credit mechanism is like very complex. It's like not very easy to understand at the farmer level, because you have to give consent, you have to manage a very long and continuous documentation. So that's the thing that farmer are very feeling insecure, because you have to give your land rights, copy of land rights, you have to give your Aadhaar card, you have to give your account book and all these things, because if carbon credit will happen, then it will be going to transact in farmer account. So this documentation is very like crucial in this project, but at the farmer point of view, it's like very specious for them. Because why they are asking, why they are taking our land records, why they are taking such type of documentation. So I think if we are connected with farmer and like if we simplified such framework that is understandable for farmer also. Like if we see like bottom-up approach, like from we understand farmer requirement, farmer documentation, what farmer keeps, and then we develop such framework that will be definitely helping farmers to like enroll in such projects and will remain in this project for long term. Because there are like two types of CSR funding. Like one CSR funding that funder is doing on its own geography, like on its plant around the plants. So that's the like long-term funding. They are always investing in their surrounding, their core villages from last 10 years, 20 years. So that's like a very easy way to like incorporate carbon component in that area. But some CSR partner are like they are doing the project on remote location basically, and that project is very small, like 1 to 3 year duration of the project. In that case, definitely it's a challenge like when you onboarding a farmer, then their documentation, then they are getting registered, then their audit is going to happen till that the project is almost finished. And then there is nobody to take care of these farmers and their documentation. So still somewhere we also working with some carbon projects, and project is almost closed, but it's not moving on the carbon credit part. Initially we talked with the farmer that you are enrolled in this project and you will get benefit of carbon credits. But after 3 years, after 4 years, still they are asking us where you committed us something that you will get something, but where is it's nothing going to happen because you done some verification, certification is pending somewhere. So I think bringing that type of framework that help farmers in documentation, that will definitely going to help and safeguard the farmer interest also, and the transparency is very important in this. I just share one example that in one project like we started implementing the carbon credit program. It's take one, and during the second year where the audit going to happen, that standard is like international standard. It's like not very aligned with the smallholder farmers in India. So when that project is started, and then we started to verify and certifying, the certification agency came and verifying the claims. Then they are asking where is the email from farmer that retail shop is purchase their seed or their fertilizers. Because such type of thing happen in large farms. Definitely they are getting a large volume of seed or large volume of fertilizer, and they get that email invoice. But in Indian context, definitely farmers not getting such type of email or such type of things. So that project is still stuck there, and the certification agency are still like trying to like encounter such type of documentation challenge. And definitely, I think India, as India has started that climate market initiative, and definitely I think if that will come, that we will implement, that we will going to have a smart farmer in India.
Thank you. I think a very interesting perspective that even if some set of farmers desire to go into this kind of arrangement, what kind of ground level challenges are there? It's not so easy. Enrolling farmers, getting audits, getting documentation, and for the grassroots organizations who are directly working with farmers, if we promise something with the farmers and if then there is no delivery of any benefits, then what happens? Whether the trust with the farmers goes down. So all these, I think, moral questions are also there. So a lot of thinking needs to be there before actually any project is designed. So Mahesh, I want to come back to you that if tomorrow any CSR come to us, and many of us are like directly working with farmers as a non-profits. if they tell us that you do, let us say, forestry or something which will generate carbon credits, and then those credits will be encashed, let us say $30, $10, whatever is the rate of credit, and that money will be shared between the farmer and the company. So whether that is allowed under the law.
See, as far as the CSR is concerned, it is spending by the company on social costs. As far as the carbon credit while carrying out our business activity, it is a byproduct. So it cannot be considered as CSR in my view, number one. Secondly, CSR laws speak only for two methods. Either the company which is obligated to spend for CSR can undertake this activity of its own or through an implementing agency. Implementing agency has to be either a trust or a society or a Section 8 company having 12A and ATG with 3 years of experience. Then if it is promoted by individuals or outsiders other than the corporate itself, then it has to wait for 3 years, should have 3 years of exposure. Then only it is entitled to act as an implementing agency. Here, thirdly, all these CSR projects could be ongoing or other than ongoing. Other than ongoing, whatever is your CSR expenditure is there is to be spent by 31st March of that year in which it is to be incurred. Other than ongoing, I can spend in the year in which it is to be spent, the year in which it is obligated, plus next 3 years. But its duration cannot be, it says not less than 1 year and not more than 3 years. Now as far as when we talk about the carbon credits, suppose somebody goes for forestation, its benefit could be beyond 3 years, because suppose there is a plantation there, the agroforestry, it will not generate any carbon credit unless that tree becomes a large tree.
Right.
So whether that credit should be given when I have a sapling, or should it be when the tree becomes large and really the carbon emission is reduced or carbon credit is available. Fourthly, see, it says your CSR activities could be done through a trust or an implementing agency. And there is also one circular which speaks that this you can create the capital asset of the implementing agency. That is very important here for our discussion or the further deliberations. Now, if I am doing in any private land or on any private land any carbon credit activity, it is not through the trust. It is with the farmers and farmers are sharing it. Then in my view, as per the existing law, it will not be covered. There are certain cases where I had come across a corporate house wanted to develop a charitable hospital at a private land and having a capex on that hospital building and infrastructure. Could it be done? Answer is no, because it is the personal land. Another client of mine, he evolved that he will have an old age home on his personal trust, land owned by his personal private trust. That is also not eligible unless you have minimum 30 years of lease. Where, see, you are spending your CSR money on construction of a building. Now, your lease period is 1 year or 2 years or 3 years, and that lease is broken, lease is terminated. What will happen to that building? It means you had spent CSR, you are claiming the spending, but the benefit doesn't go to the society at large. Now, another question which I am throwing away to the panelists also, and that you can also come at a later stage if the moderator permits. Yes. See, here the question is, suppose there is a power generation company. Now, earlier the entire power generation was through thermal. Thermal has lot of, you know, the emissions. Now, it has shifted to solar panel. Solar panels are installed in remote locations. Then power is generated, transferred to the grid, and then only now can this company or your customers who are using would be benefited? Number one. If not the company, whose CSR it would be considered? For example, EV, by 2030, our country should shift like all gradually. Diesel vehicles have been phasing out. Petrol vehicles will phase out again. And by 2030, it is anticipated that we should move to some alternative renewable energy, which may be like EV is the only way, because solar cannot function in the EV segment, or we can say the vehicle segment, because we had been explaining or researching. I create where I am one of the co-founder. Many researchers come and we were, because the solar power generation capacity is lower. Now, when some plant is running or a power generating company generating the power through the solar panels, entire power generation, big farms, even government of Gujarat C&I scheme, where 76-24% equity participation, many companies have been formed in collaboration. Power company is having the 74% equity, 26% with the minority shareholder, and we generate power at their place, at a capex basis. Now, who will get the credit or carbon credit for this? The power generating company or that person who is really using EV? Suppose he is with Reliance, he is with Adani's Ambuja. Now, if they buy 200 EVs, so whether the EV manufacturing company or EV using company should get the carbon credit, and which year, the day in which they invest in such vehicles, or they invest some when they use it over a period of 10 long years.
And whether this investment can be booked under CSR?
No, it cannot be, because the carbon credit is not there, and it cannot be. If you buy EV or you buy like electrical bus for your students for the college, can I consider it is my CSR expenditure? In my view, it is not. So still lot of changes in the legal system needs to be there. Government of India, Ministry of Corporate has to look from the holistic point of view and very genuinely and seriously, rather than from apart from any pressures from any quarters, because otherwise the EV manufacturers or some other people will do pressure on the ministry and they will pass out or issue some circulars. That should not happen. That's my view.
Very interesting, thank you, sir. I think lot of real shades of law, what can be considered CSR and what cannot be considered CSR. And we have to be very cognizant of all these shades when we design any program. So Naveen, I come back to you. I see that GIZ kind of organizations have helped Indian organizations a lot in terms of capacity building, or let us say sustainable agriculture, afforestation, so many things you have done over the period of time. Do you think that time has come when CSR funds should be used to generate more awareness, capacity building of grassroots partners, communities, and even the government departments? How much investment and whether the investment is needed?
I mean, a simple sort of answer to this is yes. And this is what we were also talking in the earlier session. The challenge that we all have in the sector is huge. We are talking about transforming this agriculture sector, making it more green, making it sustainable. And any agency, including GIZ, is only a drop in the ocean that we can do, right? And that is where I think we all need to come together to see how we can integrate different resources to make this transformation. And that's where even the GIZ works with a lot of corporates as part of our public-private partnerships to really look at how we can make the supply chains more sustainable. I think looking at the larger ecosystem of partners and stakeholders, I think CSR is one of the biggest resources, if not the biggest, one of the biggest ones besides after public resources. And I think it will be foolish to not really leverage this expertise and resources that we have within the sovereign boundaries of the country. Right? So I think CSR is must and we should leverage it. Just a quick sort of clarification on the confusion of who sort of is owning the credit. It's largely supply chain based, right? If I am an EV producer, my supply chain ends from resourcing the raw material to producing the EV and then selling it off. And within this, if I have reduced my footprint, that's accounts for carbon credit. Now I am a logistic company. I normally use diesel trucks. I replace those diesel trucks with EVs. Where is my investment? And I can claim the credit. So we have to look at the side of these supply chains as well. The last point that I would only sort of leave behind is a bit of optimism, because we have also experiences in the past. And I just want to share this experience with you all. how we can still leverage the CSR resources for carbon credits. I think that's the question that we started with. Legally, it's difficult, but there are also ways and means to do it. One needs to really understand is we should not, or we should avoid double dipping in the books, right? And that's the very, very clear message. You can't dip your social responsibility with carbon credits. That's what our colleagues also mentioned. So we have to have separate books of accounts, right? The way we worked was, when we look at this community-based carbon projects, first thing first is, of course, you don't go to the community promising them carbon credits with revenues or incentives. You go with a sustainability message, right? And carbon credit-based incentives only a top-up to it, right? Now, when you plan to do that, there's a lot of these capital investment that goes into it in terms of institution building, awareness generation, capacity building, introducing right technologies, right? Where it will all come from. So I think that is where CSR can be leveraged. The other cost that is heavy on the carbon project side is on MRVs, validation, verification. So what we did in African countries, in Kenya actually, we used our own resources as the biological resources plus some private, the other, I would say the grant resources to pitch for these costs, which are softer in nature. We also helped in terms of creating an entity of farmers as farmer federation. Now the credit generated was owned by this federation, and this federation were entitled to trade it as they want. And then they would decide with the community in terms of what they do to this monetized credits. They decided to use it for the extension services because in Africa extension services is really, really not available. Right? In Indian context, we can think differently. So I think 3 messages: keep the books very, very clear, no double dipping. CSR is different, carbon is different. Second is leverage CSR money and other sort of grant-based money to create this groundwork of institutions, of capacities, and then there should be a separate entity that takes the ownerships, the monetized value of credits on their own books. It should not be the asset book, it should not be in CSR foundation books, it should be a separate entity because that's a very clear accountability. I'll stop there, but I think, yeah, this is just to sort of give some insights that it's not purely a black and white situation, that it's no-go. There are certain sort of ways where we can leverage these potential resources for the tapping into the carbon-based incentives also.
I think again very interesting. So the Indian context is very different, and we have large numbers of community institutions present on ground, whether they are SHG federations or cooperatives or farmer producers companies. And farmer producers companies by nature they are for profit. So whether they can engage in such kind of projects rather than, as he said, why non-profit would like to risk its own balance sheet and get into legal trouble. So whether any entity which is farmers collective, which is formed for farmers benefits, whether that entity can engage into carbon projects with the farmers, and it can provide a long-term benefit to FPOs that for 20 years they have some incentive to continue their programs. So Tarush, I'll come back to you. When let us say you design these global programs for global corporations, do you think community safeguards are taken into, there are enough safeguards which are ensured by big corporations for the indigenous communities, for farmers, where the farmers are fully informed, they are taken into confidence before the projects and agreements are signed, and what kind of safeguards has to be taken?
Yes, I think that's very important. But yeah, if I'm being honest, at this point, when programs are designed, the consultations or consent, as we say, is very superficial or very surface level. I think it needs to be deeper. And given what we're talking about, carbon markets and the longevity of any carbon-related intervention is important. So, the safeguards need to be much stronger and institutionalized. So, for instance, I think, apart from a legal clarification, I think we will need a kind of dedicated framework for community involvement for carbon related projects. That would stretch right from, free prior informed consent, as we say, in the local language, in the local dialect. We were discussing this in the earlier session as well, on how to sort of develop modules that inform them of the regulations, the elements of a carbon project. You have to inform them about that it's going to be a 2030 or commitment, what are the kind of documentation, what are the kind of steps that we need to take, and so on. We'll have to, of course, give them information around revenue sharing as well, potential revenue generation for them. And of course, when we talk about land control, when we talk about deforestation or agroforestry projects, especially for carbon, we are talking about that particular intervention being in place in their farm for 20-30 years, which is going to be a big commitment for farmers. And we have to do a couple of things. One, there has to be an incentive structure on them continuing this intervention. For example, we're grappling with these initiatives, we're grappling with these issues with the work that we're now doing. For instance, there is this net zero village in Minangadi, Kerala, wherein they have devised a very interesting structure on creating a tree bank, wherein each household owns the tree and they have a tree account, and they get incentive for the saplings which survive, but not for the ones that die. So we need to create incentive structures. Secondly, we also need to create exit pathways. For instance, in say 10 years, 15 years, the climatic conditions change, all the social circumstances change, and they want a different use case for their land. There needs to be a pathway for them to do that without incurring too many penalties or without incurring too many legal cases. So there has to be a clear pathway on that. I think thinking about these things in a structured format would be important. For instance, if I say last few months, if I say look at some of the schemes, say the Rajivika scheme in Rajasthan. It gives a good outline on how community institutions need to be integrated in projects. These are the kind of thought leadership that we need to do for carbon projects. And just one last point, I think on carbon projects, I think we need to strengthen, as you said, institutions on the ground and like obviously SPOs and SHGs and so on, and not focus on individual farmers. I think we need to strengthen institutions, capacitate them, and create these frameworks so safeguards are very sort of deepened for carbon-related projects.
I think the message is clear that informed consent means deeper engagement with the community and their institutions. Without that, informed consent is not there. So I come back to you, Prabhatji, that a mechanism is suggested by Naveen that Indian content institutions can be used for, let us say, farmers' companies, which your foundation also supports. Whether they can engage in working with their farmer members and create carbon projects, which sustains both farm productivity as well as community institution product. And whether that will give confidence to your, let us say, CSR, that you are risk-free, you are not taking any risk, still you are engaging in carbon.
Sir, as already described about the law, with whom a CSR can get engaged, that must have to have FTG and 12A. So FPOs are not supposed to have that.
They are not allowed to have.
Yes, not allowed to have that because they are profit-making companies. So a CSR can work with NGOs, trust CSOs who are having 12A and FTG. And we used to design different projects. Generally, CSR budget is allocated for a year. But whenever we select an area, we think for a long-term perspective so that the area can be transformed or something significant can be done there. So there are two approaches in which CSR works, as earlier said by, said that some are within the fence and some activities are beyond the fence. So as a foundation, we also work beyond the fence at a scale. And their activities are different. You know, so I think if you look closely, the frame of implementation, I found that is different actually. And when we work with CSOs, strategically we are selecting mid-size or small CSOs because building them means strengthening ecosystem of the development. I think it is a greater task that every CSR should contribute to, and they are already contributing to it. And we need to come up with a mechanism that how these CSOs can get engaged with FPOs or panchayats to develop such projects, because even CSOs cannot directly get engaged with FPOs. Means direct transaction is problematic in a sense. Yeah. So some mechanism can be devised. When I was working with Pradhan, since I last 10 years, I was thinking of carbon credit. I need to do something of carbon credit, but I was not allowed. So some colleague formed a new entity, Cognosphere, and they are working on carbon credits exclusively. There are, whatever one can do, you need to be in the boundary of the law.
So I think it's very clear that every organization falls under purview of a certain type of section under law. And that particular organization will not risk its own compliance for even for the benefit of community. So first, safeguarding own organization is also very important. So I come to Rajesh with you that in your opening remarks you said that there are a lot of complexities onboarding farmers. First you have to train them, behavior change, they start adopting practices, then a lot of legality is there, documentation is there. So do you think that the organizations who are directly working with the farmers, they also have enough information, competencies and investment available to fulfill all these obligations?
Yeah, I think definitely gap is there because implementation agencies are also not clear what are the requirement of carbon framework, where our goals standard, what they want, what is the framework. And definitely in that space carbon developers, companies, they are supporting to implementing agencies to understand these projects and their requirements. So definitely there is a huge gap of understanding the carbon market, its framework at the grassroots level organizations. And also that second thing that we are discussing about CSR funding through carbon credits through FPO and collectives. So that's also a challenge because whenever some implementing agency is its own, it's not going to do that carbon credit, but suppose it's implementing or planning through FPO. But whenever we talk about that, whenever there's some chance to get involved with FPO and because they are profit-making company, but that time the challenge is become due diligence because FPO don't have that much of good balancing, that type of good rapport of their board and directors. So that also a challenge that FPO, the investors are not interested to go with FPO. So that capacity building level is FPO also, and implementing the implementing partner, that's also required in very we can say it's very urgent in this matter because we are moving towards that. But definitely there is a huge gap and that can be made through capacity building of the implementing partner and their teams here.
maybe we can open the floor for questions now. So if there are questions, we can take up. Yeah, please. Please introduce yourself and then your question.
Hi, I'm Veena Srinivasan from Well Labs. It's actually a clarificatory question. When you're talking about carbon credits, are you talking about only something that has to be sold, or is the BRSR reporting, does that also count in terms of, because that's completely voluntary right now, right? So can you spend CSR money and claim it on your BRSR reporting, and that's completely legally in the clean, or that's also the same problem?
We can have a few of them. Okay.
Sure.
I'm Anwar from Carbon Council of Carbon Assets. So there was an assumption, maybe I just wanted to understand better. The assumption that carbon credits, even the revenues are going to continuously increase. I think in reality, it will decrease. It will decline. It's not, this is a kind of point that related to sustainability. That's one kind of an assumption that I want to clarify. Second, even the ecosystem of functioning carbon credits, there are a lot of challenges. Even the current methodologies. There is a lot of rethinking, reimagination is required of the methodologies. And then the kind of simplification of the MRVs. I think these are some of the challenges. So maybe I think CSRs can help in building that kind of a good ecosystem for farmers to really move forward.
You will not take this question. I also have just to add.
Answer each one by one.
Okay. So first this question.
No, so on the sustainability front, yeah, on BRSR, as I mentioned, that currently you're right, CSR projects are being voluntarily reported as part of BRSR reporting, but not necessarily being calculated under the net zero agenda, under the net zero strategy, because that includes scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, and CSR does not necessarily come under those, under scope 1, 2, 3. But we know of examples, and we work with companies which are getting the CSR projects validated by carbon credit agencies and reporting the same in BRSR. But what would be exciting now is the developing India carbon market, which is now it has applications for certain industries, and they have now an offset mechanism as well. So that evolution and how CSR can catalyze that would be an interesting space to encounter.
The question which was asked by her, can CSR money be used to buy the carbon credit? I think that was
Not to buy carbon credit, for voluntary reporting.
For BRSR reporting.
BRSR, that's allowed.
Second question was the next question.
Yeah, I think for second question, like you were saying that our whole CSR market, CSR spending is very huge, but on ground it's like not showing that much. That's one question, no?
The question is that even in the carbon credits ecosystem,
Carbon credit
ecosystem, even the methodology is very complicated. AWD, then agroforestry, then there is also biochar. While as we farmers practices, they are very different. So there is a lot of ecosystem needs to be improved.
Yeah, definitely, because like every system has like different methodology. Like if you go in rice cultivation, that's a different methodology of like methane. When you go for biochar, there's a different methodology that it sequesters carbon in the soil. And same the method that there is a different activities intervention, but there is a different methods for calculating carbon credits from each activities. That become a completely different project. If you are working on rice, that rice carbon project become rice carbon project, registered as a rice carbon project, methane emission. Then if you get a biochar, then biochar become a different project and different registration. Such type of thing is happening, and like framing is very complex, definitely. That need to refine and smoothen so that this intervention can be brought up and can be streamlined as a carbon credit or it become easy for the farmer. And second, also like I see that the huge like CSR spending is huge, but every sector or every CSR company has their different agenda or different themes they are working on. Like some CSR companies, they say that we are only working on education only. Their spending is going on education sector only. Some are working on skill sector only. Some are like on health sector only. So that's why like I think that some are working on agri now. They are saying we are not shifting from agriculture to education only. So such type of like accumulative that atmosphere between the CSR. It's not like not that we can say calibrated or that in that way. And that's why that the different segments are coming out through CSR, and the longevity of project become reduced because they want to spend 3 years on this thing, 3 years on this thing. The funding is always like in crisis situation.
You want to comment? Yeah. I'll try to answer both of your questions. One, novelty has a better price, and it demand supply sort of matches. So you're right. Currently, biochar credits are like 150 per credit. It will drop because there will be demand supply gap matching. Second is you have to understand why the methodologies are there, so that there is a global acceptance and also quality assurance. Now there are efforts also being made to reduce on the burden of these methodologies. It's a scientific word, and probably if CSR can sort of pitch in to really create the science behind it, make the methodologies easy, there is a process to it. You have a scientific
That's my
base,
appeal.
yeah, go to the standard setting organization, there is a consultation, but there is a role that we all can play in terms of grant money. So yeah.
So, in the end, I have just 30-second question for you. Oh, you want to ask?
Naveen,
So,
that,
I think that, yes, Avin.
I think in the discussion we spoke a lot on CSR and their sort of whether they can develop or support projects around carbon, but like sometimes, like for example, we support a lot of plantation activities as part of our livelihood, quite a reason agriculture as well. But there have been instances where the donor itself is not aware. The NGO partner has gone ahead and registered that project with a carbon credit developer. So just throwing a curveball, because it's not always the that CSR donor is aware of what the ground what the partner is doing, and we came to know through somebody else that has happened in a project that we supported 10 years back. So I think that also needs some sort of sanctity when it comes to the implementation partner level. I think that's the other thing that I feel, which is especially when it comes to CSR, which is it's in getting increased. Like sir said, carbon is a byproduct. Naveen, you also mentioned that carbon is something which is a part of the whole. It's a cherry on the cake. I would not even say a cherry. It's like one some side sort of dry fruit in the cake, I would say. Yeah. So it needs to be treated like that. I think we are too over carbonizing everything. So I think there needs to be some sanctity and some sort of reasonableness to how much we are emphasizing carbon. It's just becoming a little too much.
See, here I would like to share with you, see, under law, we have, if corporate can give up to 5% of the net profit by way of charitable donation. Over and above this, you have to do 2% CSR activity. Political donations, that is now 7.5% after Supreme Court judgment. So 2% plus 5% plus 7.5% of net profit. There are 3 routes by which you could spend for. Through 3 different sections. 135, 181, 182. Now the carbon, if we start taking candidate, that would be the fourth one. Because it's therefore, unless the laws are amended and the foolproof mechanism is developed, there could be chaos. It's very difficult to link. And lot of changes have to be brought in the legal system. I am of the view that the present legal system does not allow such credits. To be very honest. That's my view.
I think,
No, I think
one
very
more
good.
point. What he said was plantation. If an implementation agency is in plantation and they are getting the credit points for carbon after 10 years, I think that is okay because project is for 3 years. After 3 years, CSR has nothing to do with it. And if in case that's a integrity of the project, I think the donor agency as well as the implementing agency has to put down into black and white in the deed or the agreement that not up to the time of the project, the person has to get into the carbon. Because you cannot stop an NGO to work on carbon just because he has worked on the plantation on that village.
Sir, I think
That will make the whole.
Yeah, I would like to make a mention.
That point ethically is good, but you cannot stop an NGO working into a
No, they
project.
are not
stopping anyone doing anything. I'm just
See,
There
there is a clarification by MCA. It says the surplus arising out of CSR activity shall be utilized only for CSR product. That is your over and above your CSR obligation. If any NGO or any intermediary or implementing agency is getting carbon credit at a later stage, because it is my implementing agency, that carbon credit has to be additionally used, will not be forming part of the new or adjusted against my future CSR activity.
Right. So I think the simple understanding is that the CSR is exited after 3 years. If the carbon project is there after 10 years. So whether the carbon credit is flowing to farmers or to that NGO is, I think, a legal, ethical and moral question.
Absolutely. Or to the CSR.
That's
Yes.
later between the lines, it is offshoot of that project.
So I think our time is getting over, so I just want to have a 30-second comment from each of you. What is your view, whether this should be allowed under CSR? If yes, what changes are required?
Yeah, I think CSR should be like a catalyst for carbon market, not the driving force or not the basis for one. So CSR should be allowed with all due clarifications on the legality of it and how to use community engagement.
If an organization has carbon credit generated of its own, which is beyond its carbon emission, that only surplus should be allowed to be adjusted, because otherwise it could also sell to somebody else at a given rate. So this could be considered subject to provisions or amendments in the legal system. That's my opinion.
Yeah, thank you. I think definitely CSR funds can be a way and can be like enabling the environment for the carbon credit projects, definitely. But for the carbon credits, like as become a revenue, and carbon credits are like generated and they are sold to some company, and definitely that should not be covered in CSR, because many CSR partners are always whenever we talk about carbon credits, CSR partners are very like we can say they are always asked that whom you are going to sell, like whenever the project is finished, like 3 years, as you said, after 3 years project is concluded, and after 10 years they are going to register that project in some carbon credit program. Then definitely we should take a consent from the CSR organization that have supported that fund, and definitely like and CSR partner also like want to know that where these carbon credits are going to spend or going to sold. That's transparency need to maintain between CSR and implementation partner.
I think I have already discussed in between, but I again would like to repeat, for any CSR spending, what any CSR will look for, that is clarity, confidence and convenience. So, if we are clear that we are not violating any law. We have confidence that whatever we are doing, that going to create impact on the ground, you know, and there should not be very cumbersome processes. You know. So a lot of demystification is required to be done in this sector. You know. A lot of research may be required. You know. And I would like to particularly say that researches are generally leveraged for industries. You know. So that doesn't come into ambit of CSR. You know. So we need to find some funders or investors, you know, which can help in demystifying these jargons we are talking about. You know. And if this will be easy to understand by a villager, then I think this will go on.
Thank you. I for one would not want to romanticize carbon markets too much. But also I would want to miss on this opportunity. In the transformative journey, every drop counts. So I want to discount it, but I would not over romanticize it as well. Second is, I think we have to define the objectives of each of these pieces. CSR is development objective, and I think we should be transparent enough that a carbon project could be an exit strategy for a CSR project. You have invested for 2 years, but if an NGO is ready to take it for the next 10 years using carbon market mechanism, you use the CSR time to set up the systems, set up the institution, set up this transparency in the systems, traceability in the systems, and do that. Your ownership ends there in terms of sustainability and setting systems. Let it go run its own life if a institution is taking it forward and running with it. I think that should be the mindset. I think it's pretty much like, you know, we have a tendency to let the baby go out of the house someday, right? So we have to be brave enough to say, okay, now my kid is in the 12th grade, next day he has to go to the college, let it be. And that's true the story for all the grants and CSR.
Very interesting, thank you. So I think in last 1 hour, we could touch upon legal, practical questions, ethical questions, even moral questions, whether CSRs are ready for this kind of arrangements with the farmers, and whether it should happen. If it has to happen, what changes are required. So thank you very much. I think it was a really useful session and very insightful. Now I invite CGM team to do a very short session on just 5 minutes. We are working on some principles that it has to happen. If the carbon market has to benefit farmers, what principles has to be there? So I think they will try and pitch some of these principles. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Naveen. Thank you so much.